Episode 1 of Reacher Season 3 starts with us in Abbotsville, Maine. Reacher arrives at a local record store intending to sell his vinyl. However, he's immediately distracted when a man is kidnapped in broad daylight. Reacher manages to save the kid, bundling him in the van to leave. Reacher's instincts inevitably kick in and he winds up shooting a cop as they arrive on the scene. As we soon find out, this kid's name is Richard Beck, and right now, Reacher works to try and evade the campus police. He switches cars and tells the kid to beat it, but Richie won't leave so easy. Apparently this isn't the first time he's been kidnapped, and given he has a rich father, he seems like an easy target. Apparently Richie's father is just a rug importer with generational wealth, but it's enough to pique Reacher's interest and he agrees to take the kid home. With a lot of security at the gates, including head of security Chapman Duke and a hot-headed slab of muscle called Paulie, Reacher suspects that there's more here than meets the eye. It doesn't take long for him to meet Zachary Beck, Richard's father. He has guns pinned up on the wall and visibly flaunts his wealth. Reacher, meanwhile, immediately throws shade at Richard's security detail. It doesn't take long for Zachary to run Reacher's prints and he proceeds to rattle off Reacher's impressive resume. Turns out Paulie doesn't take too kindly to army officers, and we soon learn why later on in the series. Nobody seems to know who Reacher is, but Zachary wants to hire him. Given these guys know what Reacher has done, i.e. killing the cop, he doesn't really have much of a choice. Beck decides to test his loyalty with a game of Russian roulette, and while Reacher believes the one bullet in the chamber is a dud, turns out it's actually genuine. Although Reacher does make the team, he's locked down until the morning, and as we soon find out, this is all part of his master plan. He rings someone called Susan Duffy and lets her know that he's in. We then cut back several days where Reacher is staking out Quinn, and it doesn't take long for the cops to catch up, specifically federal agent Susan Duffy. She knows what he's up to and wants his help, specifically to investigate a rug importer. Several weeks back, a high-level LA-based drug dealer flew to Maine for a meeting with the owner of Bizarre Bazaar. This isn't exactly procedure, and it would appear that Zachary Beck is dirty. Reacher wants something in return for helping though. He wants Quinn. With the deal in place, Duffy reveals that Quinn is still alive and was saved after falling off a cliff. Now, Reacher saw Quinn in Beck's car with the initial pictures shown to him earlier on, and that explains why he's agreed to see the feds again and work with them on this operation. It turns out Duffy has struggled to nail both the dealer or Beck, and so she initially turned towards an informant by the name of Teresa Daniels. Teresa managed to get a job working at Beck's warehouse, but lately she's gone dark. A week back she just fell off the radar, and while Bizarre Bazaar claimed that she never showed up at work, Duffy is concerned that she may well have been killed. She also used to wear huge earrings, which could be a factor later on. Now, Reacher and the gang concoct a fake kidnapping in order for Reacher to swoop in and save the day. The cop Reacher shot at the start of the episode actually happens to be one of the officers undercover. It was all a ploy to get Reacher through the front door. In fact, Reacher was even the one who suggested using live ammo, while the campus police were actually a genuine element in all of this. At this point, we then cut back to the present. Reacher marked his gun earlier on, so playing Russian roulette wasn't so bad, given he was always in control. Meanwhile, Duffy has John Cooper, one of the security guards, in for questioning, but he's tight-lipped and not revealing anything. As for Reacher, he finds a hidden cellar, and that night he sneaks out to investigate. Checking inside, Reacher finds an unmade bed, half-eaten food, and, more concerning, a hoop earring. As a result, there's one pressing question: where is Teresa? Episode 2 of Reacher Season 3 starts with our titular character confirming that Teresa has been moved off campus. It would appear this has taken place away from the cameras, and while there's no blood in the basement, Reacher is convinced that Teresa is being used as leverage by Quinn and Beck. But to what end? Unfortunately, Reacher is forced to hide when a car shows up. It's Beck, and he seems to be talking to a shady guy called Angel. As Reacher makes his way back to his room, Duffy questions Cooper, whom they kidnapped for questioning last episode of course, about Teresa. Duffy is hot-headed and eventually pulled off him by Billy, the other officer on duty here. He reminds Duffy that they're detaining this guy illegally and he could sing and blow their entire operation. They need to be careful. Reacher makes it back to his room just in time, as Duke shows and explains that he needs to get moving. They found the pickup that the kidnappers used, and this Angel character is going to take Reacher to this lot, which is located 90 miles south of their current location. Their plan is to ID the truck. Reacher hurriedly lets Duffy know about this, given Beck is under the assumption that a grenade went off inside the bodyguard's car. It didn't, of course, so the fact that a car is going to be squeaky clean, rather than having blood all over it, is immediately going to blow their cover, unless she moves fast and stages a scene to keep their story tight. Reacher stalls for time, while Duffy tries to move the cars, including a pretty humorous scene where Reacher just stares at a clock while pretending to make himself some coffee. Duffy meanwhile tries to move the car, but it's pinned in. Her plan seems to go completely tits up, and both Angel and Reacher arrive at the impound lot before Duffy is done. Angel is a bit trigger happy and looks like he could well kill the officer at the reception, but Reacher helps him out by knocking the guy down with a single punch. Although he and Angel find the bodyguard's car, quick thinking and a change of license plate works to fool Angel into thinking this is just the exact same model, make and accident, but taking place in a different state. And wouldn't you know it, it works like a charm. A sleepless night for Reacher leads to a sleep-deprived morning, as Reacher heads back and is tasked by Beck to go and see Paulie and Duke for his next task. After a bit of shit-talking and pranking in the gym, the trio eventually head out. Reacher is next tasked with a delivery job, ferrying some rugs to New London. Reacher knows he's on a tight window of time and he's not able to stop for too long. However, this could be their one window of time to figure out what's inside the truck. After ringing Duffy to let her know, Reacher next contacts Francis Neagley. He needs her help to run the backgrounds for the goons working with Beck, which she agrees to just as they pull into the truck stop. Duffy is here and inside the truck they find nothing but rugs. They get confirmation of this from Duffy's associate, a guy called Dick who happens to have a drug-trained canine. Back on the road, Duffy has done her homework and learned that Beck has high-profile contacts. His shipments get searched 10 times less than anybody else's, meaning he may well have someone from customs on his payroll. It's also clear here that Beck is working for someone higher on the chain of command, and we're led to believe that this person is Quinn. After ferrying the rugs to their destination, Reacher shows up at the warehouse where Angel is waiting for him. Turns out that story in the impound didn't actually fool him, and he's been tracking Reacher the whole time. Duke is on the way too, but Angel wants to have a word first. He's not quite the loudmouth idiot we thought, and he calls out Reacher for inconsistencies with his story, including knocking out the impound worker and the hot wiring gig. Unfortunately for Angel, he talks a bit too much, and Reacher is forced to kill the guy, before quite literally stuffing him under the desk. He tells Duke that Angel talks too much when he shows up, and the pair leave the warehouse together, which is where episode 2 comes to an end. Episode 3 of Reacher Season 3 starts with Reacher and Duke heading back to Beck's place together. Duke does ask about Angel a little, but doesn't pry too much, with Duke aware that this little weasel is always trying to jump the chain of command. Back inside the house, Reacher speaks to Annette, the cleaner who was sniffing around inside his room last episode. Here Reacher learns that there's a mechanic on their staff 24/7, and he also catches wind that there's something about a 50th birthday party for someone rich, which could come into play later on. Annette though is pretty innocent in all of this, given she's just here to try and pay her tuition, and Beck pays pretty well, so she doesn't ask too many questions. For now, Reacher needs to see Beck, who has questions for Reacher. His description of the kidnapper doesn't match what they found through their investigation, so Reacher improvises and makes it up as he goes along, pointing out that his gang are clearly laying low before making their next move. It seems to work and Reacher is eventually dismissed. Upstairs though, we learn a bit more about those who work with Beck. Neagley rings again, and through her we learn Paulie was discharged from the army for punching his captain's eye clean out of its socket, while he also tore off a CO's finger too. As for Angel, he did 8 years in the brig, sharing time with Paulie for sexually assaulting a female lieutenant. So what of Chapman Duke, the head of security? Well, he was a former cop, but he's now obviously turned to a criminal lackey, and his rap sheet is pretty extensive. There are some nasty people here, and of course that's all topped off by Quinn too. When Neagley finds out what Reacher is up against, she knows he needs backup. As for Reacher, he sneaks out that night after a bit of shut-eye, intending to clean up the mess he's made at the warehouse. Making his way there, Duffy decides to join him. They begin searching through the various crates to try and find Teresa, but she doesn't appear to be there. Instead, they stuff Angel inside one of the shipping containers outside. Unfortunately, 2 workers arrive ready to meet Angel, but instead find themselves in the presence of Reacher and Duffy. The pair work to subdue the goons, stuffing them in another container. Man, Reacher is just going to fill up every container with Beck's goons, right? Anyway, with confirmation that Teresa isn't here, Reacher heads back to the mansion. In the morning though, the place is abuzz as there's a big operation about to go down. Of course, the drivers haven't shown up for work, but Reacher offers to help. Instead though, he's pushed aside onto shopping detail with Richie. Whilst out and about, Rich reveals that Paulie is only here because of someone called Julius McCabe. This is actually Beck's boss, who's the real person pulling the strings here. Reacher needs to get promoted, so there's no better way to do that than to become Beck's number 2. Part of this, however, will include getting rid of Duke. Duffy and Reacher work together and orchestrate a plan, including giving Beck a tip-off about a local gang hanging at a secluded empty house. All of this is done through Angel's email to make everything look legit. After setting this up, Reacher dispatches a couple of bullies with a massive chip on their shoulder, who come after Rich. Given Beck's operation has put their families out of business, they want revenge. Following this altercation, Rich opens up to Reacher, pointing out that he has dreams to leave and never look back. Reacher obviously knows a thing or two about hitting the road and promises to get him there, but only if he opens up about Beck's business and what's really going on here. This works to loosen the kid's lips, and Richie explains that Julius McCabe is the ringleader and Beck works for him. Paulie is not actually here to protect Rich, but instead to give Julius an easy entry point to get to Rich if his father steps out of line. McCabe is the one who initially kidnapped Richie too, and in particular it was Paulie who beat the crap out of him and left him locked in the trunk for days. All of this done under McCabe's command. Initially, Beck ran a tight operation and a completely legal one too. He managed to find loopholes around customs, paying off officials to lower down charges or just making them look the other way. Unfortunately, McCabe caught wind of this thanks to Zachary bragging about his operation and made a move for the business, kidnapping Richard and forcing Zachary to play ball. While this is going on, Duffy learns about a shipment inbound to the dock after earlier infiltrating Angel's email. Duffy and Villy head to the dock where they stake out McCabe's operation. Paulie is there overseeing everything, and of course Quinn shows up too, but he's under the alias of Julius McCabe. Elsewhere, Cooper makes his move and looks set to escape after duping Elliot, the rookie officer on babysitting duties, into patching up a self-inflicted wound. After dropping off Rich back home, Reacher is off again to this house in Hartford. Just before they go, Reacher grabs a gun from the dock, which we later find out is actually Angel's side piece. Something tells me he's probably going to need it. Anyway, Reacher and Duke head out into the woods, armed to the teeth, and head to this secluded house. Of course, all of this is a ruse to get Duke alone in order to take him out. Getting nothing from the guy, Reacher kills Duke before staging the scene to make it look like a shooting, before eventually blowing the place sky high. With the evidence destroyed in a huge explosion, Reacher rushes back to Beck and hands over Angel's gun. Given Beck's extensive collection, he obviously knows his weapons and immediately recognises it, and believes Angel was dirty and playing them this whole time. Reacher goes on to explain those truck drivers were in on it too, explaining their absence. All of this also works a treat, with Reacher promoted up to becoming Beck's right-hand man, and as the episode closes out, we cut across to Reacher, who has a wry little grin on his face. So Reacher ends this week's triple bill with an intriguing glimpse of things to come. This McCabe is clearly Quinn, and this puts Reacher on a collision course with this guy, and it's unlikely to end well. The entire operation to stage Duke's death and elevate himself into the position of becoming Beck's right-hand man similarly works a treat, and it's clear that Reacher's trajectory is going to send him right into the path of Paulie, who doesn't look like he's messing about. It's definitely going to be satisfying to see this guy taken out, and the previews for this are certainly enticing. As for the operation itself, the wildcard here is Cooper, who looks like he could escape and blow the entire operation wide open when he inevitably talks. Whether Duffy and others can stop him before that happens, however, is another matter. For now though, Reacher continues to deliver great drama, and the ending certainly leaves the door wide open for next week's follow-up. Thanks for watching, and do let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Smash a like or subscribe to the channel, your support is very much appreciated. I'm Greg Wheeler, and from all of us over here at The Review Geek, we'll see you on the next video.